Hey guys, welcome back to our Guardrails Green Room session where we're unpacking material from the weekend, looking at our finances, and I'm joined today by Dustin and Silvana Chambers, and I'm excited to have you guys with us. And I want to start give it a little snapshot of how you got to Oak Ridge and give us a little bit of background there.
So we moved to the Eastern Shore in 2004. We had just finished with school in California, and we just somehow got a job at Salisbury University. So we had to, at that time, we just
So you both got a job at the same time at Salisbury?
Yes.
Wow,
yes,
very cool.
Yes. So I had to get a map and actually look where Salisbury is. I had never heard of Salisbury, Maryland.
Me either.
So that's how we ended here. I accepted Christ in year 2000 in Riverside Harvest Christian Fellowship. So when we came here, we started...
With Greg Laurie?
Yes.
Oh, how
Yes.
cool. I didn't know that.
know.
That's super cool.
Yes, year 2000. And so when we came here, we just started looking for a church, right? And one thing another, it led us to Oak Ridge. So we have been here since 2006.
Long time.
Yes.
So 18 years, but always in a shopping center.
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
not always owned a shopping center.
Yes. Yes.
We were temporary back then, but that's very cool. I didn't realize that. So that's really neat that you had that connection to Pastor Greg Laurie's church. So that's very cool. And so you came here, started working at Salisbury University. Tell me a little bit about what you do at SU.
Well, I'm an economist, and been, as Silvana said, teaching there since '04. So my research is primarily looking at government regulations and the impact of policy on regs and what impact regs have on the general population. And so that's the main focus. So teaching, research, and Silvana is also an instructor there, and she primarily does teaching within the school. So it's kind of an all-encompassing job. There's a lot going on there, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So it's not uncommon that you would also maybe be talking to Congress or something and sharing some data and stuff like that. So I know you know what you look at is pretty complex.
Yes, I just got back from a press conference in Ohio with Governor Mike DeWine. I've testified before the U.S. Senate. I've briefed, I think, 4...
Not because of crimes, but...
No. I've briefed 4 governors' offices, and I think 20 different state legislators, or legislators from 20 different states. So, yeah, there's a big public outreach piece of that. So, yeah, I stay pretty busy working on that.
Very cool. And a couple of times you've helped us here and there in making some big decisions. I say a couple of times facetiously, many times helping us in our financial decisions and looking at what we've been doing in Outlook, and helped significantly. And so you're teaching at SU, but tell me a little bit of what you're teaching there.
I mainly teach economics. I have taught information systems. I have also brought students to Costa Rica 4 years in a row. So just anything that SU needs or anything that our department needs, I'm there to help.
And your background, it sounds like you're a Texas accent, but I don't know if it's Texas. Tell me where you're from.
No, I'm Macedonian, but my parents immigrated to Germany in the 70s after World War II. There was a need for people in Germany, so they moved there. I was born there, but I kind of lived in both places, so that's kind of what you hear. You hear Macedonian, you might hear a little bit German, but that's a combination of both.
Very cool. And for folks that don't know, the reason I wanted to bring that up is that when you came to Oak Ridge and we continued to expand some of our missional opportunities, you approached Pastor Gary and said, hey, maybe we could do something in Macedonia, and you created that bridge. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I know that Oak Ridge at that time was trying to reach out and bring groups to other countries as not just national but international outreach. I had connection there, I knew pastors there, so I approached Pastor Gary. He was very enthusiastic, and we actually started doing trips to Macedonia and helping the churches in Macedonia in 2011. Wow. So we have been doing it since 2011, and we do multiple things. We work with 2 churches, mainly 2 churches, but we we help more than just the two churches. We have children's outreach, we have evangelism, and just anything that we have done, the peace conference there, right? The pastors and so on.
Super cool. So yeah, you helped to kind of bridge that, and we went and did some initial trips, and then we said, hey, why don't we host and sponsor a Dream Conference there in country, talking about the same things that we do here for pastors. We're about to do our Dream Conference again this year. And super cool because we were able to sponsor that because of Oak Ridge's generosity. And we brought in pastors in a beautiful retreat location and kind of wined and dined them and did a conference and helped them to understand these concepts, but came from all over the Balkans. And that was a really, really cool opportunity to be able to do that. But particularly those two partners, Sesha and Goran, that has had a long time relationship, and they've come here. I remember they came during a Santa's Wonderland, and they just loved that, because they told us it's Papa Noel or something like. We had to change our language to figure out the right. But they've been able to implement some of those steps in implementing some of the Dream principles. So really cool ongoing relationship. So it's been neat how God has used you. Let's talk. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about as we go through guardrails. It's really important to help people to understand some of the biblical basics about how I should be managing my money wisely. But the implications are also that there are external ramifications that happen to us, and that has a lot to do with the economy and economics. And so talk a little bit about, where are we today? Obviously, our economy is a big topic. I just saw a Gallup poll this week saying that now inflation has moved up to number 2, and number 1 is decreasing confidence in the government's ability to manage the economy right now. So these are high on the mind of Americans right now, like what's happening and what should families be doing. So you guys speak to that a little bit.
Yes, so I have actually been helping with FPU for multiple years, and I like what RVC does. I think that is wonderful, especially the last series that we're having right now, Guardrails. It's just wonderful. So the last 3 years have been very volatile economically, very confusing, very unpredictable. It started in 2020. 2019, we go from a very stable time, right? Everything looks good, to suddenly early 2020, we get a pandemic. So, of course, national income, which we call GDP or gross domestic product, suddenly drops. We have business closures, unemployment goes up. So that was a big shock to the economy. So as we go to the summer of 2020, things started reopening, things started getting better, right? So everybody it was a big relief, right? And then, right, 2022 comes. And 2022, we really it was like, COVID was kind of like a wave, right? I mean, it came the first wave, then the second wave came with the supply shock. So you had China's zero COVID policy. That was one big deal. So it caused a lot of supply chain issues. And then we had the war in Russia and Ukraine. And we had, of course, the Federal Reserve Bank printing quite a lot of money during that period of time. So that kind of flared up inflation. So the first quarter of 2022, we started seeing GDP decline, right? And then again, the second quarter. The first quarter, it was close to 2%. And then the second quarter, it was about 1%. And then that's perfectly the definition of a recession. If you have 2 quarters of declining GDP, that's actually a recession. And since then, we have very conflicting data, right? I mean, it's like one indicator is good, the other one is bad. Unemployment is good, but inflation is starting to decrease, but then manufacturing, there are some indicators that point to the manufacturing sector actually still struggling greatly. We have unemployment in the tech sector. But that being the one thing that I would want to point to our church members, the last 3 years, one thing that probably we should get from or learn is savings. Right? Savings and emergency funds, because even, Genesis 41 right? When mentions like the interpretation of dreams.
Yeah.
7 years where we have good years and 7 years where times are bad, and how we should save in the good times, and so that when the bad times come, we actually have the resources for that. Well, the same thing with GDP. There are a few years, like for example, if we go back to 92, we have a recession, but it's a mild recession. It's not a big deal. 2001, again, we have a recession, but a mild one. 2008, we have a recession, but it's actually a major recession.
Yeah.
And now we have come back to COVID, right? COVID 2020 and 2022, where, and now we don't really know which direction. Have we bottomed? When are we going to bottom? And I will actually let Dusty talk a little bit about monetary policy and inflation and some of the other indicators that we're seeing.
Yeah, where do you think we're heading in 23?
The consensus seems to be that we'll probably end up with a recession in the third or fourth quarter of this year.
And what does that mean exactly?
Well, a recession is when basically you produce less stuff. So if an economy is producing fewer goods and services, it's in a recession. The bean counters in Washington have different ways of officially classifying a recession. The same with the NFL has weird rules on classifying a catch. So there are sometimes some minutiae around that. But really intuitively, it just means that you're producing less output. And if you're producing fewer things, you don't need to employ as many people to produce a lower volume of stuff. So you tend to see higher unemployment, lower incomes, less things being produced. The tea leaves seem to point toward continuing weakness. If you look at consumer confidence measures, they show that most consumers have some mild confidence in the current health of the economy, but their expectations going forward seem to be pretty dim. The CEO confidence survey came in at an all-time low.
Wow.
So you're starting to see some major indicators where there's not a lot of faith in the economy going forward. The Institute for Supply Management, the ISM Purchasing Managers Index also came in negative. So it seems to be pretty broad-based. But then when you look at labor markets, it's incredibly strong. That's kind of the conundrum. You hear on the news stories about mass layoffs at Google and some of the large tech firms. But if you look at the overall layoff statistics for the entire economy, it's been flat for over a year. There doesn't seem to be much of an uptick in activity there. Just a mild bump in the financial sector and in the information sector. But
so let's say we do go into this recession, or maybe we're in it and we just haven't, recognized it. What would the average Oak Ridge family? What would that mean to them? What would the recession mean for them?
Well, I mean, the odds of losing your job, of course, goes up.
Increases. Okay.
You might see lower wage growth going forward, so you might not get as many raises. If you're a sole proprietor, you might have fewer customers knocking on your door wanting your services. So you kind of see some knock-on effects, people laying off other employees, not going out to eat as much, maybe not going to Ocean City as much. So you just see general softness in the entire local economy. If you look at the housing market nationally, we've seen about a 3% pullback in home prices since the peak in the summer. What is a bit alarming, though, is there was a 50% year-over-year increase in home inventories. So homes listed for sale, they're just not selling very quickly because of high interest rates. So that makes it tough for folks maybe looking to unload a house or maybe wanting to purchase another home with the high interest expenses.
So it always comes back to these fundamentals, the fundamentals about wisely managing your finances, preparing for the future. And I love what Dave Ramsey talks about, and it's not just him, but many will talk about this idea of why do you have 3 to 6 months in savings? And fundamentally, it comes down to these seasons. These seasons are going to come. There's going to be a season when you're going to need to fall back. And I've worked with a significant number of families here at Oak Ridge over the years that maybe it's not a recession, but maybe it's an unexpected death in the family. Maybe there's some huge tragedy. Maybe there's a huge medical bills that come in that were just out of control. You don't know what it's going to be, but one thing's for sure, you're going to need what you just mentioned, this principle of putting back and being able to be prepared for a financial. It's expecting the unexpected, which is kind of what I said last night. Do you gauge that the same as most, that you would say 3 to 6 months is a good barometer for having savings? And where is that savings? Is that literally in my savings account at my bank, or is it really somewhere distributed? How does that work?
So
You go ahead.
so I would say 3 to 6 months is pretty good. When you have very high inflation, though, I would be careful, because if inflation is 8%, which it has been, over the last couple of months, just about that amount, 8%, that means the value of your money goes down 8%. So if, anything
so
you
your
can
6
do,
months isn't 6 months anymore.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. So your purchasing power goes down. So
Wow.
you definitely need to think about ways on how do you protect the value of your resources, and in particular in this case it's your money. But one thing though, one additional thing that I also want to mention is that prices fluctuate. They go up and down. And whenever you are in kind of an economic downturn, one good thing is prices do go down on certain things. So if you have saved during the good times, now you can go in and buy low. And of course it depends on markets. It depends, what type of assets we're talking about.
Yeah.
But the return on any assets depends on the price that you actually buy it. So if you have savings, those are actually good times. Now, I know there's a lot of uncertainty, but I also want to mention one additional thing that is probably on no one's radar, and it's going to be quite dramatic and change the business world and the world that we know as of now, and that is disruptive innovations. So when I talk about disruptive innovations, we're talking about innovations that impact every sector, like every business and geography and education and labor markets and so on. So the last time we saw that was the Industrial Revolution. We had electricity, we had transportation, we had the telephone, right? And we saw a big change in our everyday life, right? So since then, we had, of course, the internet, the computers. But now, right now, while we're speaking, there are 5 technologies that are developing or innovations all simultaneously. One is artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
One is robotics. One is blockchain technology. One is the DNA sequencing, right? And then also battery storage. And then within those innovations, 5 innovations, we have multiple innovations within each innovation.
Iterations of innovation.
Exactly. So we're talking about impact on every business, the way we know education, the way we, businesses, new types of businesses, new types of jobs. So that's one thing that I would say, pay attention to all of those changes, because they're going to change quite a bit.
It's a weird world right now. So, speed round. Should I buy that crypto thing? Or should I just leave that alone?
No financial advice.
Okay.
Only put money what
fair.
you really, really understand.
Yeah, to me, if I can't touch it, I don't want to buy it.
No. If you don't understand, it's better not to do it. Just stay with what you actually know. If you know it, that's fine.
But I think it is smart to learn more about it.
Yes.
It's always wise to learn about it, but
Yes.
probably don't want to be first in the pool.
Yeah, you want to be on the leading, not the bleeding edge.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Hey guys, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you guys for continuing to tune in. And really, really, I'm so grateful that we have amazing folks like you at Oak Ridge that help to guide us. But again, it still comes down to the basics. You've got to do the basics. So if you haven't done Financial Peace University, I highly encourage you. You don't have to wait for the classes. It's digital and online. You can take it at any time. It's better in a group, but whatever you do, make sure you're taking that. We'll see you next time.